Hey guys, in this video I wanted to go over a couple of different systems and riffs that might be a little bit different than what you're used to. First one is hit points, SDC, and MDC. So in riffs, since there's kind of like high technology, magic, psionics, supernatural, demons, stuff like that, and then just normal puny humans, um, there's a big difference between some of these. So I'll just go through and explain them. Hit points are, from a human standpoint, like breaking bones, major blood loss, organ, tissue damage, that type of stuff. So if you're taking hit point damage, you're pretty much on the verge of death, and that's not good. SDC is basically everything else from a low tech standpoint or a non supernatural standpoint. What I mean by that is just like your normal everyday stuff, like a chair, a table, a car, door, a window. It's all going to be structural damage capacity. It's going to be your basic stuff. How much damage can a table take before it completely falls apart? That kind of thing. So humans and most creatures of flesh and bone have hit points and SDC. So there's a third, and that's MDC, and that's mega damage capacity. That is all of your supernatural and or high tech, super alloy, battle tank, that kind of thing. So think a modern tank. You come up to it with a knife, you start stabbing it as hard as you can. It's not gonna punch through that armor. You're gonna scratch the paint at worst, and nothing's gonna happen. Same thing. You take a AK-47 to it, empty an entire magazine, you know, that's it. You're not doing anything to that thing. So, in the world of rifts, if you have something that's MDC, like a suit of battle armor, or power armor, or robot vehicle, or just plain old MDC armor that you wear over your flesh and bones, that will take no damage from any SDC source, like any pistol, machine gun, knife. It has to be a high tech weapon that inflicts MD, mega damage, for it to um, do anything to it. So what is that? I mean, that has some horrible, like kind of horrifying connotations, right? If you're just a normal human walking around out of your armor, some guy with a laser rifle can just kill you instantly. It inflicts, let's say a laser rifle, he's got 3d6, it inflicts 3d6 MD. 1 point of mega damage inflicts 100 points of SDC, and a normal human may have, I don't know, at max 100 SDC. So you're toast. So you pretty much have to be wearing armor all the time when you're going into combat. Um, it gives the world a sense of, well, I think it gives the world a sense of danger. You always have to be looking out over your shoulder, planning your next move, because the world is very nasty and there's a lot of MD creatures running around, and there are plenty of people out there with mega damage energy rifles, particle beams, mini missiles, you name it. So, um, what? Let's talk about what else can be MD or MDC. Supernatural beings like dragons, demons that come through these rifts. Some DBs. DBs are just beings that come through dimensional rifts. Some of them can be supernatural, so they could have a natural MDC armor, like there's scales or like on a dragon or whatnot. So again, you could pump an AK-47 into them all day, and nothing would happen. You would have to have some sort of modern um, energy rifle, vibro knife, that kind of thing to damage it. Or you would have to be a magic user or a psionic user, and then you could have spells that inflict mega damage. So that's one system that is quite a bit different than, like, say, D&D. So there's SDC and MD. Um, some characters have what's called an augmented strength, or some characters have a supernatural strength, or you're piloting a robot, so you have a robot strength. All that means is there's a couple of different charts here where, let's say, you're a juicer or you're a bionic Borg, you have what's called an augmented strength. So at these numbers here, 24 and above, you start inflicting mega damage when you deliver like a punch, like a power punch or a power kick. Um, so if you have the minimum, which is a 24 PS augmented, you inflict 1 point of mega damage. So you could go up to that tank and you could power punch it and you could put a dent in it. And if you do that enough times, you could destroy that tank. Obviously, as the chart goes higher, you know, they say 51 not likely to exist. So 41 to 50. Again, not like this. Okay, so 31 to 40 inflicts 2d4 MD with a power punch or power kick. Counts as 2 attacks per melee. So, yeah, if you had really high augmented strength, you could, even though you were like an SDC creature, you could do mega damage to something. Then you have your robot strength. Let's say you're in a giant robot vehicle. So again, you're going to have augmented robot strength, and then you do damage based on that. And then there's the supernatural. If you have supernatural strength, you're probably going to be a supernatural creature, which means you're going to be an MD creature. Anyways, like a dragon or whatever, vampire, that kind of thing. So that's it for SDC and MDC. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is melee attacks. Attacks per melee. Probably heard me in the last video talking about that. So in Rifts, how combat works is you have a melee round, which is 15 seconds. In that 15 seconds, you have characters that may have anywhere from 2 to 8 attacks per melee. So how does that work? Well, we roll initiative. Whoever has the highest initiative goes first, and that person takes an action, and he uses one of his attacks per melee, and says, I want to shoot my laser rifle at the guy over there. Okay, so you rolled a strike. Let's say you rolled a 16. That person can then decide to dodge. You can't parry laser rifles, but you can dodge. Let's say if it was a sword strike or some sort of melee, you could try to parry it if you wanted to. That person would then roll against the player character, and assuming they rolled higher, we have bonuses all over the place, so we'd have to factor in the bonuses, of course. Assuming that person rolled higher, that would be a successful dodge or parry. And then it goes to the next person on the initiative list. But that person that was doing the defensive roll, like the parry or the dodge, that would use one of his attacks per melee. So let's say he did decide to parry or dodge, and then it comes up to his next turn on the initiative tracker. He's already down one action that 15-second round. So just be aware of that. So yeah, it seems like I have a lot of things I can do, but you may be parrying, dodging, and you're using those up. So you go to the next person in the initiative round. That person then decides to do something, attack another character, whatever. That person marks down an action. And we would just go back and forth and up and down the list until everyone has used all of their attacks per melee. And then we start a new round, and a new 15 seconds begins. We don't roll initiative unless something changes dramatically, like the battle scene changes or some other factor. Then we can re-roll initiative and reorder people. Some DMs in Rifts, they do initiative every new 15 seconds. It seems a little cumbersome, but if we wanted to do that, we could totally do that. It has its advantages. If you're if you rolled really low on the initiative table, you could potentially, roll higher. So it might be good to reshuffle people, but it is kind of a pain in the ass. So leave that up to when we discuss it later. So that is how attacks per melee work. If you're like a mage or a psionic user, some I think mages levels spell levels 1 through 5, and magic works a little different. And I'll explain that in a minute. Spell levels 1 through 5 just take one attack per melee to cast. So basically, it would go off instantly if it was your action. If you cast a higher level spell, it will take 2 attacks per melee. And what happens is you start casting on your first action, and then when it comes back to you, your spell finishes. And that's only for really high level, powerful spells. I think it's so it's like 1 through 5 is 1 attack, and then 6 through I forget what it is, but there's a table is 2, and then you have your really high level spells, which is 3. So magic. So how can you cast a high level spell at level 1? Well, you can. You have access to very high level spells even as a level 1 character. They just take a lot of resource points. So you have what's called a PPE attribute, and that's potential psychic energy, and that's kind of like your mana pool. You use those points to cast spells, and there's different ways to get them back. Like you can siphon them from other creatures. You can create PPE batteries out of stuff. It's involved, but it's pretty cool. You could have like little PPE batteries. And you can even just leech PPE off of your teammates if they allow it, if they're not using it, because a lot of men at arms don't use it. So you might be able to steal some points from some of your friends. It's a really cool system. Um, Psionicists something use a very similar pool. It's called ISP. It's inner strength points, um, and they also can do cool things like create batteries from that as well, and cast spells from there. And same thing with psionics. You can cast higher level. It just takes more ISP. Um, and But I think for psionics, all of their spells, it's a mind attack. It's all one action per melee. It never gets more than that because it's supposed to be a very quick, fast attack because you're just using your mind to attack different things. So that's how those systems work. Um, let's see what else. Speed, like how fast you move and stuff like that, is derived from your speed attribute. So um, you have a speed attribute just like you would any other attribute, and you roll 3d6 for it, just like you do with all the other ones. And I'll go over all the different attributes at another time. But then you'd have the speed factor that tells you how far you can move in a 15-second round, or and then you just divide that by your number of attacks, and that's how fast you can move per attack. So in rifts, you can move or attack, not both. Um, so yeah, that's how that works. We can go over that later as well. It's there's a whole chart, and it's basically all I'm trying to say is just because you're human and you are one class, but someone else is human and is another class, you are probably going to move differently. You're going to have different speeds. It's not like D&D where all humans move at 30 feet, all dwarves move at 25 feet. That is not Rifts. Rifts is very granular to a fault, but I love it, so it's really cool. That's pretty much it for the systems and Rifts. I think in the next video we're going to take a look at making a character and just kind of briefly go through those steps. So, thank you.